Saruman was supposed to be the greatest wizard in Middle-earth, the head of the White Council, the wisest of the Istari. But he was all a lie, a carefully constructed deception that lasted for thousands of years. What if we told you that Saruman was actually a traitor before anyone even knew Sauron had returned? What if his corruption wasn't a sudden fall, but a slow, calculated descent that began the moment he arrived in Middle-earth? What if the very thing that made him great, his knowledge and ambition, was also the seed of his darkest secret? In this video, we're uncovering the hidden truth about Saruman's jealousy, his obsession with power, and the carefully hidden resentment that festered in his heart for thousands of years before his betrayal. When the 5 Istari arrived at the Grey Havens in Middle-earth, they were supposed to be equals, 5 wizards sent by the Valar to stand against the darkness. But from the very first moment, Saruman resented one of them, Gandalf. Here's what most fans don't know. Círdan, the ancient shipwright and keeper of the Grey Havens, recognized something special in Gandalf. He saw a quality in the Grey Pilgrim that he didn't see in Saruman. And so Círdan gave Gandalf Narya, the Ring of Fire, one of the 3 elven rings. This gift would become the beginning of the hidden ill will that Saruman bore to Gandalf. Saruman was already ambitious, already proud, already convinced of his own superiority, but he wasn't chosen for the ring. He wasn't recognized by Círdan as the greatest among them. And worse still, it was Gandalf who received this honor, the same Gandalf who Saruman had begun to view as a rival. Through his jealousy towards Gandalf and his ever-growing pride and arrogance, Saruman became ensnared by his own ambitions. For thousands of years, this jealousy festered in secret. While Gandalf wandered the lands, delighting hobbits and inspiring the peoples of Middle-earth, Saruman watched, Saruman studied, Saruman waited. And in his waiting, he nursed a wound that would never fully heal. What came next was even darker than anyone realized. While still outwardly loyal to the White Council, Saruman began building a hidden intelligence network. He didn't do this openly. He did it in secret, with cunning and deception. Suspecting a potential connection between the ring and the Shire, based mostly on Gandalf's interest there, Saruman instructed his agents to infiltrate the Shire and keep tabs on the comings and goings of any important hobbits. He sent spies into the Shire decades before the ring was even discovered by Bilbo. He had already begun his surveillance, his manipulation, his preparation. But why? Why would Saruman be spying on the Shire? Why would he be watching Gandalf's movements so carefully? Believing that all of Gandalf's deeds related to some as yet undisclosed plan for self-enhancement, Saruman began keeping a closer watch on the Grey Pilgrim and sent spies to report on all his movements. Think about that for a moment. Saruman wasn't just jealous of Gandalf. He was paranoid, convinced that Gandalf had some hidden scheme, some secret plan that Saruman couldn't understand. So Saruman created his own scheme, his own plan. He built a network of spies and informants across Middle-earth, all to keep tabs on his supposed rival. This wasn't the action of a loyal member of the White Council. This was the action of a paranoid conspirator. While maintaining his position as head of the White Council, Saruman became increasingly obsessed with one thing: the rings of power. Specifically, the lost secrets of their creation. Through his jealousy towards Gandalf and using the Palantir, Saruman was ensnared by Sauron. Using the knowledge of his new ally or lore of Lost Eregion, Saruman crafted his own lesser ring and sought to emulate Sauron. But here's the most disturbing part. Saruman didn't just craft one ring. Further trying to emulate his master, Saruman crafted his own lesser ring, and similarly styled himself as a ringmaker. He became obsessed with the idea of wielding power through the rings. He studied them obsessively. He researched their creation. He spent thousands of years preparing for the day when he might wield the same power as Sauron himself. And all the while, he remained head of the White Council. All the while, Elrond and Galadriel and the other members trusted him. They didn't know that their leader was secretly studying the arts of the enemy. They didn't know that he was creating his own ring. They didn't know that his entire focus had shifted from opposing Sauron to emulating him. By the time the Third Age was well underway, Saruman had perfected his deception. He was playing two games simultaneously. On the surface, he remained a member of the White Council, a respected leader, an enemy of Sauron. But in secret, he was something else entirely. Even as he acted out Sauron's will, the White Wizard plotted to usurp his place as Lord of the Rings and of Middle-earth. If the gamble for the ring failed, Saruman reckoned he would at least govern as Sauron's right-hand man. This is crucial. Saruman wasn't Sauron's faithful servant. He was a man who wanted to become a tyrant himself. He wanted to either claim the One Ring for himself and rule all of Middle-earth, or at minimum, rule as Sauron's second-in-command. But Sauron, the true master of deception, saw through this plan. Though he fancied himself his master's equal, Saruman was blind to what his role and fate as Sauron's servant truly were. The Dark Lord would use him to enslave the free peoples, and then discard him. Saruman thought he was clever. He thought his plan was secret. He thought he could manipulate Sauron, just as he had manipulated the White Council for thousands of years. But he was wrong. Sauron saw through him completely. And the Dark Lord allowed Saruman to believe he had a chance, all while planning to discard him the moment he was no longer useful. One of Saruman's greatest crimes happened quietly, hidden from the knowledge of most. He corrupted King Theoden of Rohan through an intermediary, Grima Wormtongue. In an attempt to control Rohan, Saruman bought the allegiance of King Theoden's chief advisor, Grima, who then counseled the ailing king to do nothing about the steady resurgence of Sauron's armies. Grima became Saruman's puppet. Through Grima's whispered counsel to the dying king, Saruman was able to weaken Rohan from within, without a single overt act of war. He didn't need to conquer Rohan. He simply needed to paralyze it, to make it powerless, to ensure that when the time came for war, Rohan would be too weak to resist. This was not a sudden act of betrayal. This was part of Saruman's long game, years in the making, decades of careful manipulation. Saruman was preparing his move long before anyone realized the danger. Eventually, Saruman's deception unraveled. But by then, it was almost too late. When Gandalf came to Isengard to confront him about his suspicions, Saruman revealed the full extent of his treachery. Upon Gandalf's arrival, Saruman revealed his betrayal and true intentions, shedding the title of Saruman the White in favor of Saruman of Many Colors. In that moment, everything changed. The mask came off. The great wizard, head of the White Council, member of the most powerful order in Middle-earth, was revealed as a traitor, not just to Gandalf, but to all the free peoples of Middle-earth. But here's what makes this even darker. Saruman believed he could still win. Using the kind-hearted Radagast as an unwitting pawn, Saruman summoned Gandalf to Isengard and imprisoned him in the Tower of Orthanc. He trapped Gandalf. He imprisoned the one wizard who might have been able to stop him. And in his arrogance, he believed that this single act would secure his victory. He didn't realize that Gandalf would return. He didn't realize that the very act of imprisoning the Grey Pilgrim would be the beginning of his own downfall. In the aftermath of Saruman's fall, Few people remember what Gandalf said about him, but Gandalf's words are chilling in their accuracy. Quote from Gandalf: "Saruman believes it is only great power that can hold evil in check, but that is not what I have found." Saruman's fundamental belief was wrong. He believed that to fight darkness, one needed to wield darkness. To match Sauron's power, one needed to become like Sauron. This belief drove him to study the enemy's arts, to create his own ring, to build his own army of Uruk-hai, to become, in essence, a second Dark Lord. But Saruman never understood what Gandalf understood, that true power comes not from force, but from hope, from sacrifice, from the willingness of the small and weak to stand against overwhelming odds. Saruman's obsession with power blinded him, and in the end, his blindness was his undoing. And that brings us to the end of this exploration into Saruman's hidden darkness. If you found this investigation into the wizard's secrets compelling, don't forget to subscribe and leave a like. What do you think? Was Saruman always meant to fall? Or could things have been different if Círdan had given him the ring instead of Gandalf? Share your theories in the comments below. Take care, and we'll see you in the next one.